Hei, tervetuloa G-studioon ja Gasgridin kaasujen tulevaisuus-webinaarisarjan toiseen osaan. Ensimmäisessä osassa me julkaistiin osallistavan strategiatyön tulokset 4 skenaarion muodossa. Ja nyt meidän matka on siinä pisteessä, että me halutaan jakaa meidän visio kaasujen, vedyn ja sektori-integraation tulevaisuudesta Suomessa teidän kanssa. Meidän webinaari koostuu 2 osasta. Ensimmäisessä osassa minä, eli Anni Sarvaranta ja meidän toimitusjohtaja Olli Sipilä keskustellaan visiosta, palautellaan vähän mieleen skenaarioita. Ja toisessa osassa me saadaan panelisteja vieraaksi ja siirrytään konkreettisella tasolla paneelin muodossa vetytalouden kehittämiseen. Meidän paneelien edustajat tuo kokemuksia siitä, miten eri markkinoilla ja maissa vetytaloutta on lähdetty kehittämään globaalisti ja näkemyksiä Suomen tämän vuosikymmenen vetytiekartasta. Meillä on mukana Outi Ervasti Nesteeltä, Stine Grenaa Jensen Energinetiltä, Helena Sarén Business Finlandilta ja Filip Smeets Hydrogenilta. Ja meidän osallistujilla on myös mahdollisuus esittää kysymyksiä pitkin webinaaria chatissa, joka löytyy webinaariruudun oikealta puolelta. Meidän asiantuntijat poimii näitä kysymyksiä esitysten aikana ja näihin pyritään vastaamaan paneelin jälkeisessä Q&A-osiossa. Sitten olisikin aika siirtyä meidän studioon, jossa odottaa toimitusjohtaja Olli Sipilä. Moikka Olli.
Terve.
Ja päästäänkin pikkuhiljaa aloittamaan. Olisiko sulla Olli jotain aloitussanoja meidän kuulijoille?
Kiitos Anni ja tervetuloa myös minun puolestani panelisteille ja webinaarin katsojille tähän tilaisuuteen. Vuosi on ollut vaiherikas puhtaiden kaasujen agendalla siitä, kun me julkistimme meidän 4 skenaariota. Totta kai paljon muutakin on tapahtunut. Kaasumarkkinat ovat avautuneet ja markkinat ovat integroituneet Suomesta Baltiaan ja myöskin monta muuta tekemistä ollaan saatu aikaiseksi. Niistä ei ollenkaan vähäisempänä Gasgridin perustaminen. Siitä iso kiitos meidän henkilöstölle ja kaiken kaikkiaan meidän sidosryhmille tämän vuoden aikana. Mun mielestä myös tämä meidän strategiaprosessi oli erittäin innostava ja mielenkiintoinen. Olen urani aikana ollut sadoissa strategiaprosessissa mukana ja tämä oli osallistavuudessaan, mitä päätimme lähtemään kokeilemaan sidosryhmien ja henkilöstön kanssa ainutkertaista. Ja tulokset olivat sellaisia, että olen erittäin iloinen, että päästään tänään jakamaan niitä teidän kanssa ja keskustelemaan, että miten viemme energia- ja raaka-ainejärjestelmää ja kaasuja sen osana eteenpäin. Ja tervetuloa siihen mukaan.
Yes, olen ehdottomasti samaa mieltä tästä strategiaprosessin onnistumisesta ja itselle vaikka työ sinällään on tuttua, niin tämä oli semmoinen prosessi, jonka itse pääsi ensimmäistä kertaa viemään alusta loppuun saakka. Ja korona ei millään tavalla tehnyt tätä matkaa helpommaksi. Tässä ollaan yhtä kokemusta rikkaampana ja ylpeänä voidaan seistä nyt lopputulosten takana. Joka tapauksessa tässä niin kun otetaan ensin lyhyt kertaus näihin skenaarioihin, hyvin tiivis sellainen, ja sen jälkeen päästään Olli vähän kertomaan siitä, että miltä näyttää toimintaympäristön kehitys meidän näkökulmasta, johon meidän strategiatyö myöskin sitten pohjautunut. Eli lyhyt tiivistelmä meidän skenaarioista. Ensimmäisessä skenaariossa Suomi ilmastojohtajana, vedyn ja sähkön nousu, perinteisen kaasun rooli vähenee Suomessa EU:ta nopeammin, ja suomalainen yhteiskunta sähköistyy nopeasti. Perinteinen siirtoinfra kehittyy vedyn ja huoltovarmuusroolin välille ja siirtoinfralle rinnakkainen vetyinfra alkaa rakentua. Toisessa skenaariossa Suomi saarekkeena, kaasulla huoltovarmuutta, EU:n ilmastopolitiikka kiristyy, metaaniala on passiivinen Suomessa ja vetytalous Suomessa kehittyy EU:ta huomattavasti hitaammin. Uusia tapoja hyödyntää kaasua ja infraa ei oikeastaan hyödynnetä ja siirtoputkiston rooli painottuu kohti huoltovarmuusvarastoa. Sitten kolmannessa skenaariossa ristiriitojen Eurooppa, perinteisen kaasun jatkoaika, EU ajautuu sisäisiin ristiriitoihin, energiakäännös epäonnistuu ja alkaa fossiilisten polttoaineiden jatkoaika. Vetyä tässä skenaariossa esiintyy, mutta ei niin vahvasti. Ja perinteinen kaasun käyttö jatkuu korkeampana kuin ennusteissa povataan. Sitten vielä viimeisen skenaario tässä pinkillä taustalla päättävästi hiilineutraaliuteen monimuotoiset kaasut. Hiilineutraaliuspolitiikka mahdollistaa tämmöisen laajan transformaation koko kaasusektorille. Vetyä löytyy niin siirtoverkosta kuin paikallisverkostoista ja tässä kehitysversiossa se painottuu kuitenkin tämmöisiin erillisiin vetyklustereihin. Eli keskeinen ero ehkä tuon ensimmäisen skenaarion kanssa on tosiaan se, että siinä vetyinfra alkaa rakentua laajemmin ja mittavammin, mutta muuten kaasujen hyödyntäminen on sitten vähäisempää kuin tässä monimuotoisen kaasujen skenaarioissa. Ja ehkä Olli nyt sulle nämä esiteltiin viimeksi webinaarissa ja silloinkin meiltä kysyttiin niin kuin Q&A-osiossa yleisön puolelta, että minkä skenaarion Gasgrid näistä valitsee. Ja silloin vastattiin sitä, että me ei niin kuin valita tiettyä skenaariota, vaan tehtiin ne sen takia, että haluttiin avata meidän ajattelua tätä meidän strategiaprosessia varten. Eli me ei ole muodostettu edelleenkään näkemystä, että mikä näistä meidän mielestä on paras tai mihin meidän strategia nojautuu. Mutta sen sijaan me ollaan muodostettu se näkemys siitä, että mihin toimintaympäristö kehittyy ja tähän se meidän strategia nojaa. Eli Olli lähti sitten avaamaan meille pikkuhiljaa niitä ajatuksia siitä, että mihin suuntaan toimintaympäristö lähtee Gasgridin näkemyksen mukaan kehittymään ja miten se sitten vaikuttaa meihin kaikkiin.
Tosiaan yhtiö ei voi valita yhtä skenaariota ja usein kehityksen kulku on enemmänkin monen skenaarion summa kuin yksi skenaario. Yhtiö toki voi vaikuttaa sen skenaarioyhdistelmän suunnassa, että miten se toimintaympäristö kehittyy, olla siinä aktiivisena tekijänä. Ja jos me katsotaan sitä kevään skenaariojulkistuksen aikaa, mitä ollaan tapahtunut, niin ainakin itselle nousee tämä hiilineutraalisuusagenda hyvinkin vahvasti on painottunut tässä kesän yli. Samoin elvytys globaalisti keskeisiä teemoja, mikä vahvistuu tällä hetkellä. Ja totta kai kaiken kaikkinen uudistuminen, joka kulkee, niin nämä on niitä kokonaisuuksia, mitä näen, että on tässä kesän yli vahvistunut. Ja tuo hiilineutraalisuusteema, niin kyllä se yhä vahvemmin näyttää siltä, että se rakentuu puhtaan sähkön maksimaaliseen hyödyntämiseen mahdollisimman nopeasti. Tällä hetkellä Suomessa käytetään noin kolmannes energiaa erilaisina fossiilisina polttoaineina, jotka valtaosaltaan pitää seuraavina vuosina korvata. Ja kyllä se näyttää siltä, että täällä Pohjoismaissa erityisesti tuulivoima tulee olemaan se uusiutuva puhtaan sähkön lähde nykyisen kysynnän ja tuotannon päälle. Ja jos mietitään, että mitä ennusteet sanoo, että tämä puhtaan sähkön kysyntä, jotta me päästään hiilineutraalisuuteen, niin lisääntyy sen 50-70%, niin puhutaan aivan valtavasta muutoksesta jo sinällänsä. Mutta sitten kun tämä kaikki uusi puhdas sähkö on hyvinkin sääriippuvaista isolta osaltaan, niin meillä on valtaosa sääriippuvaista tuotantoa tässä pohjoismaisessa sähköjärjestelmässä. Ja siitä syntyy tämä suuri tarve, että jos me haluamme meidän yhteiskunnan, etenkin teollisuuden ja liikenteen ja lämmityksen prosesseja muuttaa hiilineutraaliksi, niin tarvitsemme joko puhdasta sähköä niihin kohtiin, missä pystytään suoraan sähköistämään, mutta niissä, missä se ei ole mahdollista, niin muita aineita ja siinä kaasut astuvat puhtaina uusina skaalaa tuomina kokonaisuuksina kehiin. Sinänsä tämä myöskin vaikuttaa meidän huoltovarmuuteen. Iso kysymys jatkossa, että miten me joka päivä, kesät, talvet, eri tilanteissa, mitä maailma voi meille eteen tuoda, niin meidän yhteiskuntamme säilyy huoltovarmana. Niin näitä isoja kysymyksiä nousee tässä tulevaisuuden energia- ja raaka-ainejärjestelmässä eteen. Toisaalta meillä on esimerkkejä, että esimerkiksi Saksassa on uusiutuvan sähkön, tuulen ja auringon muodossa niin hurja lisäys tapahtunut tässä vaiheessa ja nähdään jo sähkön siirtoverkon ja sähkön varastoinnin ongelmia. Ja vielä siitäkin pitäisi tahdin kiihtyä. EU:ssa on tehty uusia päätöksiä kiihdyttää tahtia, mikä on hienoa, mutta se lisää vielä tätä tarvetta löytää niitä ratkaisuja energian varastointiin ja siirtoon, jolla saadaan sitten aina se tuotannosta se puhdas energia sitten sinne käyttöpaikkaan mahdollisimman luotettavasti. Ja tämä on niitä globaaleja haasteita, jossa muutkin maat painii ja se voi luoda mahdollisuuksia sekä Suomelle että suomalaisille yrityksille sitten kotimaan ulkopuolella myös vientiteollisuudessa.
Miten sitten Olli niin kuin siirtoverkkoyhtiön rooli tällaisessa toimintaympäristössä ja tällaisessa muutostilanteessa, niin miten niin kuin se linkittyy tähän kehitykseen ja millaisena niin kuin Gasgridissä nähdään tämä siirtoverkkoyhtiön ja erityisesti kaasusiirtoverkkoyhtiön rooli tulevaisuudessa?
Jos otetaan vähän taaksepäin yleisesti niin kuin infrastruktuureista, niin kyllä infrastruktuurit ja energiainfrastruktuurit on luoneet hyvinvointia hyvin vahvasti. Jos mietitään Euroopassa ja Suomessa, niin yhdistyneet sähkömarkkinat, avautuneet sähkömarkkinat ja nyt viime aikoina avautuneet ja yhdistyneet kaasumarkkinat. Olemme päässeet ensimmäistä vuotta Suomessa elämään avautuneita kaasumarkkinoita, niin ovat tuoneet hyötyjä. Esimerkkinä kaasun kilpailukyky on tänä vuonna parantunut ja siinä mielessä sitä on muun muassa kesän aikaan käytetty korvaamaan ilmastolle haitallisempia polttoaineita. Eli jo nyt asiakkaat ovat päässeet hyötymään siitä markkinarakenteista ja infrastruktuureista. Ja miksi tämä olisi erilaista tulevaisuudessa? Uusiutuva puhdas energia on aika usein, sitä tuotetaan hyvin eri paikassa ja eri määrin kuin missä sitä kulutetaan. Ja sitä kautta nähdään, että erilaisten yhdistävien infrastruktuurien ja erilaisen sektorikytkennän tarve lisääntyy hyvin voimakkaasti, koska se ajallinen ja paikallinen hajautuneisuus tulee vain lisääntymään. Mä näen, että Suomessa on aika hyvät mahdollisuudet tähän, eli kun tämä puhtaista energianlähteistä voidaan luoda erilaisia kaasuja, biokaasu nyt keskeisenä heti tänään ja tällä vuosikymmenellä, mutta yhä enenevässä määrin muun muassa elektrolyysillä tai muilla teknologioilla tehty vety tai sitten jopa esimerkkinä suomalaiset biolähteistä olevan hiilidioksidin ja puhtaan vedyn yhdistämisellä luotavat synteettiset kaasut, joita pystytään siirtämään jo tänään maakaasu- ja biokaasuverkossa, mitä meilläkin täällä Suomessa on, niin luoda isoja teknologiamahdollisuuksia suomalaisille toimijoille ja läpi Suomen. Toinen, mitä tarvitaan, niin tuolla käyttöpäässä sitten teknologiat käyttäjillä, tarpeet kehittyy ja siinä sitten infrastruktuuritoimija yhdistävänä kumppanina voi luoda tilanteita, jossa aikana, kun on vähän epävarmuutta teknologian ja monen muun tekijän kohdalla, niin kaksi yhtiötä ei välttämättä pääse niin nopeasti ja siinä tarvittavassa skaalassa ja niin pitkäaikaisilla ratkaisuilla yhteistyöhön, mutta siinä välissä operaattori, siirtoverkko-operaattori tai muu infrastruktuurioperaattori voi auttaa sitä kehittymistä ja luoda samalla niitä tulevaisuuden mahdollisuuksia. Me uskotaan, että puhtaissa kaasuissa niin se tapahtuu todennäköisesti sekä nykyistä kaasuinfrastruktuuria muuttamalla, mutta myöskin tämmöisten teollisten klustereiden, jotka kehittyvät puhtaan energian kysynnän ja tarjonnan ympärille, niin siellä tapahtuu varmasti osa siitä esimerkiksi vetykehityksestä. Eli
me täällä Gasgridillä halutaan kehittää tätä kaasujen roolia osana energiaraaka-ainejärjestelmää ja sen murrosta ja siirtyä pikkuhiljaa tähän puhtaiden kaasujen kokonaisuuteen. Ja tältä pohjin haluaisitko Olli tiivistää vielä meidän vision?
Kyllä, tähän tiivistyy meidän visiomme vuodelle 2035. Kaasut mahdollistavat hiilineutraalin yhteiskunnan. Me tarjoamme sille alustan. Me uskotaan, että tämä alusta yhdistyy myös muihin alustoihin energia- ja raaka-ainesektorille. Ja yhdessä me sektorikytkennän avulla luomme olosuhteet, missä Suomessa on huoltovarmaa, luotettava ja tehokas energiaraaka-ainejärjestelmä. Ja samalla me toivotaan, että me pystymme luomaan myös semmoisia olosuhteita, joissa pystyy kehittymään teknologioita ja uusia tuotantomuotoja läpi Suomen, jotka luovat työpaikkoja paikallisesti, mutta myöskin vientiteollisuuteen. Eli nämä molemmat asiat on hienoa, jos pystymme yhdistämään yhdessä koko energiaraaka-ainealan ja yhteiskunnan muiden toimijoiden kanssa läpi Suomen. Me uskotaan, että jos ja kun Gasgrid on mukana siinä, niin tämä on mahdollista toteuttaa nopeammin ja isommassa skaalassa kuin että yksittäiset toimijat yksin tekemään tätä muutosta. Eli siinä mielessä niin jokainen palanen on tärkeä ja me haluamme olla yksi niistä.
Kaasut mahdollistavat hiilineutraalin yhteiskunnan. Me tarjoamme sille alustan. Tämä on aikamoinen muutos Olli siihen niin kuin aikaisempaan suuntaan ja ehkä semmoisen perinteisemmän infraoperaattorin roolista siirtyminen kohti tämmöistä suomalaisen energia- ja raaka-ainejärjestelmän kehittäjää. Ja herättää kysymyksiä siitä, että miten esimerkiksi meidän asiakkaat sidosryhmät kokee tämän uuden suunnan. Häviääkö meiltä tehokkuus, kun me lähdetään kehittämään ja otetaan aktiivisempi ote tähän kehittämiseen? Onko täällä vaikutuksia asiakkaan palveluun, hintaan, nykyisen kaasujärjestelmän osalta? Hyötyykö Suomi? Toisaalta mitä tapahtuu ja minkälaisia riskejä meillä on, jos me ei lähdetä tähän suuntaan? Haluaisitko Olli vähän avata vielä tarkemmin näiden kysymysten pohjalta?
Erinomaisia kysymyksiä Anni, kiitos niistä. Ja kyllä se kaikki lähtee siitä asiakkaasta. Asiakaslähtöinen kaasumarkkina on yksi meidän strategiamme kulmakiviä kohti sinne tulevaisuuteen. Meidän asiakkaat haluaa luotettavaa, kustannustehokasta, ennustettavaa kaasujen siirto- ja siihen liittyvää järjestelmää monen muun tekijän ohella. Ja kyllä me lähdetään siitä, että tätä nykyistä markkinaa ja nykyistä infrastruktuuria pitää näillä asiakkaan tarpeiden mukaisesti kehittää hyvin vahvasti. Ja me kysymme itseltämme, että jos me emme tässä onnistu, niin miksi yhteiskunta ja asiakkaat voisivat luottaa meihin sitten siinä puhtaiden kaasujen maailmassa. Tämä on ensiarvoisen tärkeää meille, että lähdetään siitä nykytilanteesta vielä kehittämään. Meillä on vasta tänä vuonna avautuneet kaasumarkkinat ja paljon on tehtävää, vaikka hienosti on lähtenyt käyntiin. Niin siihen meidän strategia tässä tulevaisuuden kaasujen kehityksen ensimmäisessä vaiheessa keskittyy. Toisaalta meillä on kyllä hyvin tärkeää, että juuri tällä hetkellä lähdetään rakentamaan yhdessä tätä tulevaisuuden kaasujen siirtoalustaa. Puhtaat kaasut voi olla tulevaisuudessa niin Suomessa kuin maailmalla merkittävästi isommassa roolissa osana yhteiskunnan energia- ja raaka-ainejärjestelmää. Koska nämä samat haasteet on globaaleja, niin me uskotaan, että kun tässä asiassa siirrytään ja kehitetään nopeasti, niin Suomen lisäksi me voimme myös olla hyötymässä näistä globaaleista mahdollisuuksista ja siihen liittyvistä työpaikoista. Mä uskon, että meillä on aika hyvät mahdollisuudet tähän. Gasgrid nähdään tässä ehkä roolinsa perustuen niin semmoisena verkottajana ja yhdistäjänä ja sektori-integraatiota edistävänä toimijana. Se vaatii paljon kehitystä, että miten sektori-integraatio toteutuu käytännössä. Siinä pitää kehittää sekä fyysisiä että kaupallisia järjestelmiä. Ja siinä me haluamme olla mukana. Mutta haluan alleviivata sitä, että se tapahtuu aina siirtoverkkotoimijan järjestelmä vastaavan sellaisen perustehtävää vaarantamatta, mikä on se kaasujen siirto ja sen päällä olevat järjestelmätoiminnot. Muita meidän strategian kulmakiviä on vastuullisuus. Me haluamme toimia yhteistyön kautta muutosvoimana ja me uskotaan, että panostamalla erityisesti henkilöstön hyvinvointiin ja osaamiseen, niin me saamme tämän meidän vision mukaisen tulevaisuuden toteutumaan. Me uskotaan, että siinä on erilaisia vaiheita kohti sitä visiota tässä tämän vuosikymmenen alkupuolella, niin varmasti jokainen yhtiö ja ala ja monet maat, Suomi siinä mukana, niin luo niitä visioita, että minkälainen yhteiskunta me haluamme olla hiilineutraalissa tulevaisuudessa ja minkälainen energia- ja raaka-ainejärjestelmä meillä siinä on. Me uskotaan, että mitä pidemmälle tämän vuosikymmenen loppua me mennään, niin yhä enemmän kokeillaan erilaisia konkreettisia ratkaisuja. Niitä varmasti kokeillaan jo tänään, niin kuin me saamme lehdestä lukea hyviä uutisia piloteista, mutta koko ajan vuosikymmenen loppua kohden mennään yhä laajempiin kokeiluihin ja ratkaisuihin. Ja siitä se vasta se murros kiihtyy, eli 30-luvulla ja siitä eteenpäin kohti 35, kohti 40, kohti 50 ja siitä eteenpäin, niin murros globaalisti kiihtyy. Saamme nyt ainakin lähes viikoittain lukea, kuin eri valtiot toteavat, että tulevina vuosikymmeninä haluamme olla hiilineutraalia. Tämä muutos luo meille sen näkymän, että tähän kun aidosti pyritään, niin siellä on mahdollisuuksia teknologiatoimittajille myös sillä vientipäässä ja meidän kysymys, että miten me Suomen tarpeet ja tämä globaali vientipotentiaalin tarpeet niin pystytään yhdistämään ja olla Gasgridina osa sitä yhteistä kokonaisuutta.
Miten sitten meidän asiakkaat ja sidosryhmät, onko tätä palloteltu tätä strategiaa heidän kanssaan, eli onko semmoinen vastaanotto ollut minkälaista?
Mä koen tällä hetkellä, että viimeisen parin vuoden aikana niin laajasti on muuttunut se, että nähdään, että tämä voidaan tehdä vaarantamatta niitä yhteiskunnan kilpailukykyisyyttä tai turvallisuutta tai murros hiilineutraalisuuteen. Totta kai paljon on tekemättä, paljon on ratkaisuja vielä kehittämättä, mutta hyvin laaja usko yhteiskunnassa ja asiakkailla, että tämä pitää tehdä ja tämä tehdään ja onnistutaan vielä siinä. Ja sitä kautta, kun me ollaan käyty keskusteluja meidän sidosryhmien kanssa, meidän asiakkaiden kanssa, niin tämä strategian kaksijakoisuus, tämä nykyisen markkinan asiakaslähtöinen kehittäminen, niin se auttaa jo tällä vuosikymmenellä nopeasti siihen muutokseen ja sitä pidetään tärkeänä. Biokaasu siinä on yksi tekijä. Voidaan mahdollisimman nopeasti pyrkiä uusiin ratkaisuihin, kun ne asiakkaat, jotka hyödyntää kaasua, niin voi luottaa, että tulee turvallisesti ja kustannustehokkaasti. Mutta toisaalta myöskin kannattaa sitä, että nyt lähdetään hyvin laajasti miettimään, että mikä on se tulevaisuuden järjestelmä, koska ne investointisyklit on pitkiä ja jokainen haluaa siihen varautua ja varmistua niin rauhallisin, mutta varmoin ja suhteellisen nopein askelin. Eli siinä mielessä niin asiakkaat ja muut sidosryhmät ovat ottaneet tämän hyvin vastaan.
Kiitos. Eli ehkä tässä niin kuin tiivistäen voisi todeta, että me halutaan olla, me ollaan monopoli, mutta me halutaan olla johtava toimija tämmöisen markkinalähtöisyyden yhdistämisessä asiakkaiden hyödyksi. Ja se vastuullisuus ja asiakaslähtöisyys niin kuin halutaan integroida niin syvälle meidän yhtiön, meidän kaiken tekemisen DNAhan, että sitä ei oikeastaan enää tarvitse johtaa erikseen, vaan se tulee sisäsyntyisesti. Ja mä itse tykkään aina sanoa myöskin sen, että me ei yhtiönä olla olemassa meitä varten, vaan me ollaan yhteiskuntaa ja asiakkaita varten. Ja se niin kun on toiminut viimeiset pari vuotta ja toimii edelleen ainakin oman työn johtotähtenä. Ja niin kun tuolla niin kun meidän yhtiössä näitä keskusteluita käy ja itse pohtii, niin mä luulen, että myöskin se niin kun rooli, mikä meillä on ja se vastuu, mikä meillä on, niin tuo myös sitä aika niin kun ylpeyttä kaikkien meidän osalta siihen toimintaan. ja samalla niin kuin se vastuu kyllä tunnetaan. Ja se, että me päästään näihin tavoitteisiin ja että me pystytään elämään ja hengittämään sitä vastuullisuutta ja asiakaslähtöisyyttä, niin se vaatii myöskin sitä jatkuvaa vuoropuhelua asiakkaiden, sidosryhmien, teidän kaikkien kanssa ja myöskin tämän toimintaympäristön systemaattista seurantaa. Me pysytään ajan hermoilla. Eli me kannustetaan, niin kun prosessi on ollut avoin ja prosessi on ollut osallistava ja jatkossakin tullaan tarjoamaan varmasti niin kun alustaa ja mahdollisuutta myöskin tämän dialogin jatkamiseen, mutta kannustetaan tosi vahvasti myöskin teitä kaikkia ja meidän asiakkaita laajemminkin niin, keskusteluihin meidän kanssa ja antamaan palautetta ja niin kun kehittämään yhdessä meidän kanssa meidän ja kaasualan toimintaa. Ehkä näihin puheisiin tässä voidaan pikkuhiljaa lopettaa meidän strategiadialogi, jättää tämä tässä niin kuin hautumaan ja toimimaan ajattelun avaajana meidän paneelille. Ja tänään meidän paneelissa ollaan fokusoimassa keskustelua vetyyn. Tällä hetkellä puhutaan niin kuin vedystä tosi paljon, joko me ollaan omassa vetykuplassa tai sitten on niin kuin vähän tämmöinen laajempikin vetyhype käynnissä Suomessa ja Euroopassakin. Ja sitä, että mikä tekee tästä nyt vetyhypestä erilaisen kuin ne aiemmat vetyhypet. Miksi sillä vedyllä voi olla roolia oikeasti Suomessa myöskin hiilineutraaliuteen siirtymisessä, työllistämisvaikutuksia, miten Tanskassa on lähdetty toteuttamaan vetyagendaa, miten muilla edelläkävijämarkkinoilla toimitaan. Näihin kaikkiin kysymyksiin me toivottavasti saadaan vastauksia kohta alkavassa paneelissa. And in the panel discussion, we will not speak Finnish and you will not get a translated version of our discussion, but we will turn the language directly to English because we have great international guests as well. And from further notice, I think we can try to connect our guests online and start the panel in a few minutes. Thank you, everyone. Kiitos, Olli.
Thank you.
Let's go and continue with the panel. Welcome back. And welcome to the part that I think we all have been waiting for, the actual panel. Before going into that, we have received some questions into our chat box, and we will pick questions to the questions and answers sessions, which will be organized after the panel. But for further ado, let's go to introducing our panelists. So together with myself and Olli, we have 4 amazing hydrogen economy experts to share their success stories and lessons learned. And let's go introducing our guests. First, we have Outi Ervasti, Vice President, Renewable Hydrogen and Power-to-X from Neste. She has vast experience in management consulting for oil and gas industries, biorefinery industries, biochemicals, bioenergy, pulp and paper, as well as media and packaging industries. Her experience includes compilation of business and production strategies, feasibility studies, due diligence, sustainability studies, industry sector development plans, and conversion programs for distressed industrial sites. During her career, Outi has managed and supervised tens of management consulting projects, as well as acted team leader for consulting professionals, and has project experience from 30 countries. Welcome, Outi. Then we have Stine Grenaa Jensen, Director Green Systems from Energinet. Stine Grenaa Jensen is the Director of Green Systems as Denmark's national transmission system operator for electricity and natural gas, Energinet. She has worked at Energinet as Head of Gas System Development and Chief Economist, and also in the field as the Chairman of Euroelectric's Renewables Working Group, Senior Economist at the Danish Energy Association, and Senior Scientist at the RISO National Laboratory for Sustainable Energy. Welcome, Stine. Then we have Helena Sarén, Head of Smart Energy Business Finland. Helena Sarén leads the Smart Energy program together with her team, Business Finland experts and international network. She has worked previously as the Head of Energy Growth Program at Business Finland, has cleantech responsibilities at Invest Finland, and has worked as senior consultant, team leader, and project manager at Finpro, as well as project engineer at Wärtsilä. Welcome, Helena. And finally, we have Filip Smeets, Senior Vice President, Nel Electrolyser Division at Nel Hydrogen. He was appointed as Senior Vice President in February 2020. He has been in the electrolyzer industry for more than 10 years and comes from a position as Managing Director for Hydrogenics in Belgium, where he was responsible for all hydrogenics electrolyzer activities. Prior to that, he held senior positions in several global industries companies such as Cabot Corporation and Cytec Industries. So now we have all our guests introduced. Welcome once more. Let's move forward with the discussion. As a quick warm-up question for everyone about hydrogen economy now and the hype. Will it really start happening this time? Why? Why not? What is different compared to the previous hypes? And let's have a quick tour, starting with Outi, continuing with Stine, Filip, Helena, and finalizing the tour with Olli. Please, Outi. I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. About this hydrogen thing, so I think it's a different hype or different issue this time. And why is this? The renewable electricity prices have decreased. There is more renewable electricity capacity coming. Then there is strong political willingness to do this. And it's also driven from countries around the North Sea, like Germany, the Netherlands to a large extent. The gas fields have been depleted there, or are being depleted. They want to have now a new solution, and that's the hydrogen. So there is also, with hydrogen, you may be able to also become less dependent on imported energy to Europe. There is also advantages and advances in electrolysis technology development and a lot of incentives. So now we are really serious about this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Outi. Then moving forward with Stine.
I think one of the most important driving forces at the moment is the change in cost in renewable energy. So the cost of electricity from wind power and the cost of electricity from solar. I think those two are the main driving factors for the hydrogen economy at the moment. Then one other part is that we actually see at the moment that a lot of countries and also Europe are going towards very ambitious targets on the reduction of CO2. And to do this, we actually require more than direct electrification, which is what most countries has done so far. So we need to do something else. And in that, the hydrogen way of going in different directions is actually a way to solve some of the issues of reducing CO2 emissions in, for example, heavy transport or industry or production of chemicals and so forth. So two main things, in my opinion, that are different is costs of renewable electricity and then the ambition on the green transition in Europe.
Thank you, Stine. Any additions to Outi and Stine's comments from Filip?
Yeah, well, I think I can support what has been said already. I think what we are facing today and why this, I don't think it's a hype this time, I think it's a reality, is that the value proposition of the renewable hydrogen technology has become crystal clear now. And that was not the case 10, 15 years ago. Now, I think there's no debate anymore about climate change. Everyone accepts its effect. Not everyone, but let's say the majority of the policymakers understand that its effect and it's a threat to the world. And we understand very well what role and what an enabling role hydrogen technology can play in that at a certain moment in the energy transition. So that has become very crystal clear, and policymakers now have caught on to that reality and to what value the hydrogen technology can play in the energy transition. And they're moving forward with policies to support the deployment of these technologies at the right moment in the energy transition.
Thank you, Filip. Helena, your turn.
Yes, I think colleagues pretty much said the most essential issues, but just pinpointing very briefly 2 points here. And I think that today, at this moment, the momentum is better than earlier, as there's a critical mass of players active in the field at the moment. And with the players, I mean not only the public sector, but essentially the businesses. And as at the end, it's the businesses that will make it happen to realize. And also another point that was, however, mentioned earlier also is that there are large market transformations like the climate change, electrification of the society, and the low carbonization are hugely on the map at the moment. So these were just the issues I wanted to mention, but otherwise the colleagues mentioned pretty much everything. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Maybe then Olli, some concluding remarks from colleagues.
Very in the same page with the colleagues. I think the thinking has really changed in a few years' time. Both the climate change as a threat is seen globally to most of the countries and decision makers and people in the society. So that has been a change what has happened. But also then this energy transition as an opportunity by countries and by businesses who will make the change happening is really taken place in the last decade or so. And if I remember in the beginning of last decade, we thought that the wind power was around 100 euros per megawatt hour at that time and easily developing, and then solar power was 200 and plus during that time. Today we are speaking of 10 euros to 20 euros per megawatt hour, so 1/10 of that price in 10 years. So that has played a huge role then to enable other parts of the value chain becoming competitive in coming decades as well. And also then one aspect is the solar and wind. They are weather dependent. You need a competitive enabler for that when it's not blowing or shining, and you need that at scale. So I think there's a qualities in hydrogen and clean gases which bring the scale. So these are those, in my books, the biggest changes in the game.
Thank you, Olli. So according to our panelists, at least today, no hype this time with hydrogen. And maybe some countries have been moving more quicker towards this hydrogen development than others. And maybe my next question would go to Stine in Denmark. You are, or you can be seen more a forerunner at least compared to Finland. Why has Denmark decided to be one of the early movers in this development? What are the goals? What are the key takeaways that you could give to Finland and Finnish industry and TSOs in developing the hydrogen scene?
I think it's quite interesting you say that we are first mover because actually Denmark doesn't have a hydrogen strategy as a lot of other countries. But where we are kind of a front runner is actually focusing on how to see the CO2 emissions going down. We had very strict targets for 2030 to reach 70% CO2 reduction. And that's a very good driver for looking into the hydrogen economy and what can come from that. Besides that, we have very ambitious targets on how to utilize our wind power. We have worked together with, for example, the Netherlands about building energy islands in the North Sea in order to harvest much more of the wind resources we have available there. And working a lot, we are also an electricity TSO, and we are looking a lot into how to integrate these amounts of electricity into the power system. And that's actually very difficult without putting on a lot of additional cost in the electricity system for balancing and transporting the energy. And in that project, we actually also started looking into a combination of energy islands, offshore wind power, and using hydrogen, and then not only converting it to hydrogen, but also looking into the possibilities of converting it even further to different type of fuels that could help reaching the 70% CO2 reduction target. What we still see a lot of difficulties in is actually getting demand along. We have the targets of the CO2 reduction. We have very ambitious politicians to reach it. But it's still quite difficult when we don't have a very high hydrogen demand in Denmark today. We don't have any direct customers for such large amounts of hydrogen. And in that respect, it's important for us to work closely with, for example, Germany, that are just south of Denmark, so we can actually perhaps work with them on sharing how to develop this, but also the Netherlands, where we are discussing energy islands in combination with those. But I really hope that we'll see a demand push for this as well, and not only a push coming from the electricity system wanting to utilize the renewables to reach the CO2 reduction targets. So I think we are a bit ahead in thinking about wind power in connection with this, but I still think we have some way to go in order to enhance the demand and get some pull for the technology development as well.
Yeah, maybe not forerunner if you compare to the Netherlands or the Germany, of course, but to compare to Finland, I think you have already taken a few steps ahead of us. You said about this cooperation towards Germany, but how do you see the cooperation towards Finland or Sweden and in this region?
I think one of the good possibilities in the Nordic countries is actually the history we have in collaborating in the electricity system, which is very important for walking down this road as well. But we also have some very good advantages in handling bioenergy in different kinds. It's very different from the countries how we do it, but it's actually quite important if we want to go from hydrogen alone to hydrogen in combination with other products. That could be methanol, DME, or other types of fuels. And there, the knowledge and collaboration in the Nordic countries is very important. And I think we have a very good advantage in utilizing that in Europe. It could be, for example, in the maritime industry. It could be in aviation, for example, where we could have a possibility to develop production of fuels based on renewables and hydrogen in the Nordic countries.
Okay, what of then maybe quick question towards Olli on this cooperation toward the Nordics. We just introduced a new strategy of Gasgrid Finland. Do you see more cooperation between the gas TSOs also in the Nordics? I know we have good cooperation in the Baltics. And then to everyone else in the panel thinking about also this cooperation topic, and then when we discuss cooperation between countries, Finland, Sweden, Germany, that is talking about big transmission pipelines, do you see, thinking about the next question, do you see more of this decentralized development or these bigger transmission lines in hydrogen development in the future or near future? But Olli, you can start with this.
Yeah, I definitely see value in cooperation everywhere, and especially in the Nordics and the Baltic Sea region. We have qualities, and the Nord Pool electricity market development in recent decades has shown the value of the cooperation in both sustainability terms, security terms, as well as the competitiveness terms. So we see a connected energy markets in electricity and gas have brought benefits in the region. And I would see, if we talk about transmission infrastructures, and if a hydrogen or clean gases will become a similar energy carrier than electricity or gases today are in the future, then it's definitely a important topic to understand, discuss that how they will play a role in a Nordic context as well. So a lot of thinking and a lot of analysis is needed for that, but a good question to analyze together in the Nordics.
And then moving to panelists, we can start with Filip, then Outi and Helena about this. How will this hydrogen economy start from smaller scale development, or do we need bigger transmission lines?
Well, I think both are okay. For me, I think you need, of course, have grassroots initiatives. But I think the bigger picture and the bigger challenge is the infrastructure play that hydrogen technology can be and is. And there, I think first and foremost, the cooperation should be at the level of the policymakers, making sure that regulations are aligned between all member states in the EU, that technical standards and norms are aligned, that barriers that prevent fast deployment of hydrogen technologies are identified and mitigated, taken out, and that the necessary support mechanisms, the instruments that investors need in order to have a positive business case for a hydrogen investment are developed, are rolled out, and that they are aligned across member states, because we can't have different instruments in each different country, because that will, I think, have a bad impact on how global industries will look at this business and how fast they can jump into it and invest and roll out the technology. So I think it's really a task for the policymakers, but of course in very close cooperation with the industry and with the industry associations to bring all of that together in one coherent picture for the EU.
Okay, I think that we need both this centralized kind of approach. As Filip said, you need to have this kind of regulation work, regulation about the same for everybody, so that we have a field to play. Of course, as in regarding electricity and natural gas, there has been this success in the building the kind of transmission systems around Europe. Why not for hydrogen as well? What I also think is very important and beneficial collaboration is this research and development projects, which Neste is also doing together with other European partners, and that is something we should also continue and in the future, and I see it very, very valuable. Then from the company's perspective, companies make investments in the kind of local setting, so also building local kind of hydrogen based ecosystems and networks is also important. So both aspects are needed and they complement each other.
Thank you, Neste. Outi, we will move soon back to Neste's plans, but before that, Helena, do you have some concluding remarks on this incentives topic?
Or do you want to answer the centralized or decentralized issue?
First, that's...
Yes. Well, there are so many issues, but okay, I don't want to take the rest of the panel discussion discussing about it. But I also fully support the idea, but the colleagues also said that there's a room for both. And it was very interesting seminar we had at Business Finland a couple of days ago about with Frost & Sullivan, and they have indicated that generally in the energy sector, now we are living the decade of decentralization as a whole. But however, there is a room for centralized solutions. But I think that the solution, the future landscape will be more fragmented. But again, it depends now what we are talking about. Because as the hydrogen plays a very crucial role in various solutions, it can be a different kind of solution when we are talking about power to X, for instance, with larger ecosystems, whether it's decentralized or centralized, whether we are talking about blended hydrogen, which is probably going towards the other end, or then issues about the role of ammonia as a green carrier, or various kind of storage solutions where we can combine lithium-ion and hydrogen as storage systems. So it depends also the business within where the hydrogen is involved, which kind of solutions might be relevant and where do we start from. But definitely in this segment, we need a lot of research and development. We need investments to demonstrations. And then definitely we need to have lots of investments also to do the scaling up.
So I think conclusions from this topic might be that both are needed, centralized and decentralized. And then I would like to go back to this industry side. And Outi, could you shortly show us and tell us the plans what Neste has for this hydrogen economy in the future? It's really interesting, I think, to summarize for the audience, as Neste is a huge player in the Finnish and also global markets.
Thank you. We established the business platform Renewable Hydrogen and PTX at the end of last year. And we are making, our goal is to kind of deploy the renewable hydrogen and PTX technologies for Neste in Neste's operations and also develop new products based on these technologies to the markets. We have also bought a stake or share in a company, Sunfire, which is also producing and developing this solid oxide electrolysis technologies. So we are also studying it from the kind of technology developers' point of view. But in our refineries, so we have this ambitious target to reach carbon neutral production by 2035. And we need to do a lot to reach that target, and hydrogen plays a key role in this. And hydrogen is used in large quantities in oil refineries to produce fuels. A common way to produce hydrogen has been to produce it from natural gas and water in high temperatures. And this process brings in addition to hydrogen, also carbon dioxide. And that has led to significant carbon emissions. And then by using renewable hydrogen made with electrolysis technology, instead of a hydrogen made of natural gas, it's possible to avoid considerable CO2 emissions, and there is a direct environmental benefit. So we have we can use renewable hydrogen in our existing processes and make our products less carbon intense, and then we can also use hydrogen and also in the future supply hydrogen as fuel. We are already working on a pilot project to produce renewable hydrogen in our Rotterdam refinery, and this is an EU project called Multify, and we are working together with CEA, Sunfire, ENG, and Paul Wurt on that. And this is a kind of a pilot project with 2.6 megawatt electrolyzer. But we are also making vision for this is a vision for a kind of a refinery in transition. So we are planning also for Finland this kind of installing electrolyzer capacity to produce renewable hydrogen, and we are currently evaluating the techno-economics of this thing. We would use it in our existing products, in both oil products and renewable products. We can sell it to the market. We could sell the excess heat, for example, to the city of Helsinki. And then another part of the story is that we would capture, we are studying to capturing the CO2 from our existing facilities, and then combining the renewable hydrogen with the captured CO2. We have a possibility to make PTL, power to liquid fuels, or other chemicals and materials which are sequestrating the CO2 captured in those products. So what we are going to do next year, we will start a project on CO2 utilization possibilities. And then we also would challenge the other companies who are emitting CO2 to make similar type of research and explore the opportunities. This is a new way to think of circular economy. We should make the CO2 also circular. So this is something I would like to share with you about Neste. We have now built our vision. We are gradually reaching this target.
Thank you. Very interesting. And one kind of quick follow-up question on this scale-up and timelines. Do you see that what happens in the next 10 years? Will we have a more scaled-up system in 2030? And what is needed? And maybe Filip can also start thinking of my next question to you. Your hydrogen, you're engaging in this H2 development project across the globe. And how do you see this scale up in the next 10 years? But Outi, first, please.
We will have to do this. Is absolute must if you want to become carbon neutral. We have to use also renewable hydrogen, or then we have to capture all the CO2 and bring it to the North Sea, somewhere in the caves there. But this renewable hydrogen gives the possibility to process the CO2 further. There will be scaling up. There will be definitively a lot of new projects in Europe on this. So I see hydrogen, the bigger projects will come stream. Now I'm talking about the European level in about 3 to 4 years. And there will be more capacity coming on stream towards the end of this decade. Then the other fuels and the power to X technologies, they are quite expensive at the moment. So it will take a longer time for them to be in a large scale available. But we are also working gradually on this. And then, of course, regulation is needed to kind of pave the way also for the expensive synthetic fuels that are made of renewable hydrogen and captured CO2.
Thank you, Outi. Then Filip and also other panelists, please think of your comments on this scaling up topic. And Filip.
Yeah, I think we need to take a moment and think about what we're trying to do here. I think rolling out H2 technology is not the goal. The goal is to arrest climate change. And that means that there is only one metric which is important, and that is CO2 emissions. So I think if all governments around the world would deploy a policy that is targeted towards reducing CO2 emissions as a one single driving metric, then we will get there. And then technologies that do that at the lowest penalty cost to society will emerge first and do the job, and then followed by others. So I think a CO2 tax is very instrumental in order to get us there where we need to be. And there are a number of applications, power to X applications that bring very strong CO2 reductions at a relatively low cost to society. So as we manage to increase CO2 tax, CO2 prices, the more and more applications will become available to investors to get a positive business case and roll out these technologies. But the key is we need to all align around one metric, one system to drive CO2 prices that pushes the most relevant technologies out first and the less relevant later.
Thank you. Do you have, Stine, something you wish to? Yep.
I think it's important when we talk about scaling up to remember that scaling up is important to drive costs down and ensuring that this technology will deliver on also low cost and not only deliver on CO2 emissions in order to compete with other types of solutions. And what I see is important in that aspect is, of course, the different components and the industry getting better at producing the different components at lower costs. But we also see in the analysis we are doing that when we are talking about scaling up, the integration in the energy system in general becomes extremely important in the final cost for the consumer. And in that, we both have the integration with, of course, the electricity system, but also the existing gas system, if we want to utilize that, or the current demand for hydrogen. But one point that is often forgotten is where do we get the flexibility from? Is it storing hydrogen? Is it having flexible operation in how we utilize and produce hydrogen? And I think that will be important in the steps of scaling up, understanding the different connections to the rest of the energy system in order to deliver what I think is important in scaling up, driving costs, total costs down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, quick comment from Filip and then Helena and Olli, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I think if you look at the levelized cost of hydrogen of a power to X plant of scale, then what becomes immediately apparent that the biggest chunk of the cost is related to electricity cost. And when you look at the electricity bill, so that 70-80% of the levelized cost of hydrogen is the electricity bill. And if you look at the electricity bill, 50 to 70%, depending on the jurisdiction, is taxes, levies, etc., which are policy driven. So if we want power to X business cases to be viable, then again, policymakers need to think about how we can redesign the energy market so that electricity bill for storage applications, and not only for hydrogen but also electricity storage applications, become viable. Then 20% of that levelized cost of hydrogen is capex. And don't worry, we got this. And Nel is working on that. We have a very aggressive roadmap to bring that down. But even if we cut that in half or bring that to 20%, then still we have this elephant in the room, which is the electricity cost. That needs to be tackled too.
Thank you. Would Helena, Olli, you like to comment?
Yes.
How do we get the electricity price down?
No, well, I'm just thinking about the scaling up issues and about the political decisions. So some additional issues there, which to the points that colleagues already made. So I think it's at the moment, as there are so many, I could say, the balls in the air, and we really don't know what kind of future we have, let's say in 30 years' time or so, related to this issue. So I think that it would need a lot of wisdom, for instance, from EU level decisions, that there is they allow and support the development of holistic cross-industrial solutions. So we are not focusing on partial optimization, but let's have a wider look and let the development take place in those ones. And then also providing various kind of testbed availabilities and so forth. And also the regulation point of view, I think it's very important that at this stage, they are not too binded to certain technologies. So let the research and development continue and then let the market select the winners then in the end. Because anyway, there are different time spans depending on the solutions we are talking about. So that was my add-on to this very interesting discussion going early on.
Thank you.
I would be very supporting on all the aspects discussed here. We need customer-oriented and market-oriented regulation always, and especially now when we look to coming decades, we need a innovation there as well in the market design and the whole energy system regulation. What will be the best market design and tax system for the future energy system, which is decarbonized and sector integrated. So how we do it, I think there's no answer yet exactly, but I think there's a lot of innovation needed. And for the Finland and the Nordics, the Baltic Sea region, I think we are in a well placed there. We have come very long way with our electricity market and continuing the good cooperation which is between the countries. As inside the countries, for example, I think in Finland different actors in the energy and industry are cooperating quite well overall. So all that discussion to make the regulatory model and all the parts of the energy system more fit for the future is needed. And I would, as Filip said, there would be one kind of instrument. Then that would be great to get across all sectors. That would be probably bring clarity there. So that's the clarity is absolutely important in the countries and between the countries, and hopefully we are getting there. But a lot of work and innovation needs to be done in that respect as well.
Thank you, everyone. One thing in this discussion caught also my ear. It was a comment from Filip that you said that you should measure everything just by the emission reductions. Related to this hydrogen economy, do you believe that if this is fully market-based and we would only measure it through this CO2 reduction, would hydrogen technology then be the winning technology, or do we need incentives to get the electricity price down, for example, in producing cleaner energy?
Well, I think if you look now at the situation, we can have interesting projects already, viable projects, if you directly link your hydrogen production facility to wind or solar without passing over the grid, so you don't have any worries about the taxes and levies, etc. So that's possible, and if you go over the grid, then policymakers need to find a solution on how to deal with that. So I think the technology is mature enough to take the next step and to scale up. We at NEL, we are continuing to improve our technology to make it more cost effective. And in both product lines, as well alkaline as the PEM product line. We are also investing in upscaling our manufacturing capacity. So we're going from 40 megawatt to 500 megawatt capacity next year in Norway. With new technology, new manufacturing technology, automation, etc. And that will have an enormous impact on our costs. So the innovation will be 30% of costs out. Another 30% reduction will come from manufacturing scale and automation. But we need volume because if we develop the supply chain, and at the moment, let's face it, the business is still homeopathic in volumes. If we go to mass market volumes, then there will be another 30% savings that we can realize. So the potential for the technology to become really, really cheap, low cost is there. And we're working on those things that are under our control. With regard to volume, we're also more and more active at the advocacy work to work with member states and with the EU Commission via the association or directly to bring about these policy changes.
So once again, I think, thank you, Filip. In general, from this discussion, I think we come to the conclusions, thinking of Stine's starting point from Denmark, saying that you don't have hydrogen strategy, from the talking of these incentives we need, from the regulation, that in general, the starting point for the whole thing would then somehow be, well, in best case global, then European level and national strategies. And maybe I know that Finland, we don't have a hydrogen strategy yet. I know that Business Finland has been preparing a roadmap, which was actually released just last week, if I remember correctly. Helena, if you could shortly, we will go back towards Finland, in this case, summarize this roadmap, and then taking into account this discussion incentives, everyone maybe think about the role of these positive incentives that states and national governments, should there be these kind of incentives. Can we do this without some kind of the role of governments or EU level taking a role in this development? But then Helena introducing shortly roadmap of Finland and then other panelists' incentives.
Okay, very briefly, just a couple of words about the background why I was initiating the hydrogen roadmap at the moment. Probably should have been done a little bit earlier, but better late than never. So anyway, the role of hydrogen, as we have heard today, has increased tremendously on a global level. And I've noticed it very clearly that in my global team, there are signals on hydrogen. I mean, from all over the world, it's skyrocketing all the time. And there's a huge need for solution and hopefully solutions which are commercially viable, which is, again, like we were discussing earlier on a little bit challenging at the moment. And also the hydrogen is very much in the core of the EU energy policy. And like mentioned earlier, also the Germany, for instance, is driving there very, very actively. And also several Finnish industries have recently published their own hydrogen roadmaps. So it's very, very important that we have a national view on decarbonizing our industries and society and what kind of role of hydrogen has in it. And Finland is according to our ministry, is not going to have a separate hydrogen strategy, but hydrogen is part of our national energy and innovation strategy. Because hydrogen is there has one role, however, very important role, but it's part of the puzzle there. So in the roadmap, the target was really to have a view from our point of view, what are our strongholds, and we based our value chain analysis pretty much on the EU classification, like we discussed about the generation, transmission, transportation, mobility, industrial uses, storage, and also various conversion solutions. And as it's obvious that as a Finland, we cannot be the world leaders in every segment. So this hydrogen roadmap, I think it gives us a good backbone for our actions towards Europe, and that includes also policy work. partnership building and also funding issues. So our companies and organization can focus on internationalization based on our strongholds. And definitely we can continue and should strengthen the work in all of creating partnerships. And like today was discussed a lot with the Nordics, as definitely we need partners. So that's about it. So strongholds were found. Of course, there are some issues where are gaps, and there definitely we would like to intensify cooperation again with foreign players in order to create this kind of end-to-end solutions with our partners.
Thank you, Helena. Quick comments from panelists, and then I think we have time to go to some questions and answers also from the audience. So if you have something more on this incentive topic, then raise your hand, Stine, please.
Just to say that even though we don't have a hydrogen strategy in Denmark, we have a government that made a climate agreement and part of that this summer. And there they decided to put out a tender for more offshore wind parks and also connect it to energy islands. And they actually are asking us to think about hydrogen in that connection. They are asking the different industry partners to find ways that could include hydrogen as well. So I think in government, you can make strategies, but it's more important to make policies and actually try to push the development of thinking new and trying to include it in different ways. And I think this is a way to do it. You can find a lot of different ways, but here it's actually in order to facilitate more collaborations between different types of industries, and in that connection create partnerships that are actually thinking about integrating hydrogen in another way in the system and in combination with, for us, offshore wind energy, which is quite important. And then the other part in that is also actually making small ways to facilitate different types of partnerships. I think that this about hydrogen and Power-to-X, we actually have to find new types of partnerships, not partnerships that are more in the energy industry that some of us are used to, but thinking more across different types of industries than what we were used to. And that's actually also where I think the Nordics is quite interesting, because there we have different traditions in industry development, and that could actually be a good way to collaborate in the Nordic countries.
Thank you. Yep, Outi and Filip, and then Olli.
Yes, about incentives, I think that this is quite incentivized sector of this energy. At the moment, there is EU programs ongoing and under development, and from a company's perspective, I think that these are kind of speeding up the kind of the pace to install renewable hydrogen solutions, and they are also made in a way that enhance collaboration between different companies in different countries. So I think that they are quite efficient nowadays, and they really speed up the transition well. So from a company's perspective, these are welcome, very welcome.
Then quick comments from Filip and Olli, and then we have some questions from audience.
I think if we look back at history, what we see what works best from point of view of policy measures is mandatory quota. We have seen that in the past with CFKs. That was also a threat to the world in the 90s. And everyone was scared that we would not find a solution. But there were mandatory quotas installed. And within a couple of years, new products were developed and rolled out and replaced the CFKs, and we the world dealt with that very important issue. I think we see it also in the electricity sector, where there were mandatory quotas for installing renewable power, and we can be extremely positive about the outcome of that, because if you see where the cost of renewable solar or wind power is today, nobody had imagined that it would drop that fast, that quickly. The same thing we can see for renewable fuel. there is a mandatory quota of reduction of or minimum 10% renewable fuel for transportation by 2020. It will go up towards 2030. This is what works because this pushes the industry to look for good, effective green technologies, and they have to replace their polluting, obsolete technologies with the green ones.
Yeah, I just quickly comment. Looking forward to questions there. That definitely how we create the demand, how we create the market, then to solve which will be the most competitive solution for what purposes. I think we should start there and develop there, then, because market will bring the change in a effective and secure way in the end of the day.
Thank you. So I see we have 10 minutes left. In the questions and answers side, there are some questions that are focusing fully on Gasgrid strategy. I will leave them now unquestioned, and to audience, we will take them from here and make sure that these questions will also be answered. But so we can focus on this topic of the panel here. Question to everyone. I think a very good question here is that there were mentions of more jobs through these new solutions, which is of course very important to every country, that we also create more welfare, collaboration, integration. How are you sure that these new jobs will emerge, and how soon do you think this will happen? Does anyone wish to start?
Yeah, I would agree to a certain extent, but there is always a winner and a loser. When green technologies develop, there will be more jobs created in that sector. But at the same time, we will see that jobs in other sectors with, let's say, more polluting or obsolete technologies will fade out. So it's a communicating vessels. Initially, you can see an increase for sure, but I think it will level out over time.
Any other comments?
I think that by investing in these technologies and bringing new solutions to the markets, you are able to keep your job and create new jobs. But if we are not doing anything, then we will lose our jobs. So it goes that way. So in order to be in the game, you have to renew yourself. We can't promise like plenty of new jobs, but we can promise interesting new jobs and interesting careers and opportunities to develop yourself. But realistically taken, the industrial sector is not likely to decrease or increase the number of workplaces.
I also think that it's about the competitive edge and the competitiveness of our companies and the European companies in the coming decades, what we are talking about. So we really have to be there in the front line in the development in order to safeguard the competitiveness of our companies in a global competition.
I think that's also like in a national perspective, the new energy forms are interesting from the job perspective. As Helena said, that the future is to some extent distributed. In the of course it's also centralized, but the generation it's more distributed than ever before, and that creates on the distribution level and then on the transmission level question how we make the system efficient. But then when this generation of energy happens at site, that can bring and most likely will bring a new jobs, for example in operation and maintenance and building those sites. In for example biogas, you can create a good local circular economy value chains to create local jobs there. And I've seen some energy companies taking advantage on the installing and adjusting solar panels and heat pumps, which has increased their headcount. So really looking into these new value chains and how it can increase local activity in the clean gases and across the energy sector. I think there's an opportunity, and of course somebody needs to manufacture those. So which are the most competitive places to manufacture? Then it's about the competition then and the capabilities of the companies. So.
Thank you. Then next question about investment and investment size. How much investing does it concretely come with the utilizations of the possibilities brought by these new technologies? How much money do we need to put in to this development? A question maybe towards the industry here and then towards the transmission system operators, that if we are to build new hydrogen pipelines, where does the money come from? Who wishes to answer?
Well, I can start perhaps saying that I don't want to give like exact figures, but bringing new technologies to the market and installing pilot and demonstration plants is the most expensive exercise you can ever take. So and for these things we also need this kind of incentive and support. Then to be able to kind of have the scale benefits, you need to invest very much, and it's not when we are investing in the, for example, in the refinery, it's not only the technology package or the core solution. There's a lot of other work that you have to do beside, and you have to make kind of storages and pipes and things. So the investment like amount escalates, and then these investments have shown to be kind of higher than originally thought. So this is still a kind of decision that you want to drive this industry forward. And then it's also a question of how you market these products, which are less carbon intense. So it's also making business, making new value propositions to be able to kind of to get your investment proposals accepted. But it's not the kind of, it's not little money at all.
Mm.
Maybe a comment from Helena.
Yeah, I could say a couple of words. Like Outi said, that it's I don't have a crystal ball, or probably nobody has what kind of huge amount of money we are talking about, except that the amount is huge. Like International Energy Agency estimated that on general level, going towards a flexible energy systems, we need on a global level minimum $2 to $3 trillion annually in the coming decades. I mean, some indication, huge amount of money. And France has just said that they are going to invest about 7 billion euros by 2030 in hydrogen economy. Germany, 9 billion. And this is only a fraction, a starting point anyways, when if you're thinking about decarbonizing the whole industries and all the wider share of industries. And what Outi mentioned here is very important issue is that what is the customers and end clients' viewpoints? Are they willing to pay probably a little bit more for CO2-free end product, for instance? And what is then the market force there? And very interesting from the Nordic point of view is that like SSAB announced that they are going to go to CO2 steel production. So, and replacing the fossil fuels with hydrogen in their processes. So that again depends on from the end client's point of view, how they see, how they value the CO2 end products. But anyway, talking about huge sums of money, and definitely we need the incentives, EU level support, and definitely also a cooperation.
And then maybe TSOs, if we build hydrogen pipelines, this is a very good and difficult question also for us as companies. Stine, do you have you been thinking of solutions to these funding of these potential new pipelines? How is it done?
In general, I think if there's a customer that are willing to pay for transport of whatever, if it's methane or hydrogen, actually we don't care. If we can make a business out of building the infrastructure for the clients that are producing and using, then I think we can find a way to go. I think the difficult thing in this is getting from these, let's say, 5 megawatts the facilities we have now, and let's say if we go to gigawatts, then the pace and the difference in that, and how we then want to utilize the infrastructure is very important, because when we do make the investments, it's important to get it right from the beginning, because it's quite expensive to start up, and it's expensive to build it too small, and it's expensive to build it too large. But when we do talk about cost, I think it's important, as you kind of mentioned, that it depends on whether or not we believe in the CO2 target. If we think that we have to reach the target no matter what, then I don't think the investments going in this direction is much different from choosing a bit other direction. So if we want the target, then we want to do the investments and have the costs. What I think can change it a bit is the pace we have to invest in, which actually means that also in, for example, the gas infrastructure business that I'm working in, we could have stranded costs in some areas of the country, and we have to deal with that, and that's a cost as well. But then we, of course, see investments in hydrogen as a way to utilize already done investments in new ways that are actually still supporting going for the CO2 target. So, but I think we're very much into reaching the targets, and in that way also very engaged in doing the investments. I just don't want to waste consumers' money in building the wrong thing for the future. So I need to know where the demand is going before we can plan how to do it.
Thank you, Stine, and I'll soon lose my job as hosting this panel, because we have already gone over time. Always happens when the actual discussion actually gets started. These really good questions, we have to end the discussion, but hopefully our audience has a quick time for Olli to kind of draw conclusions of these topics, and I will already thank everyone for this panel. It has been extremely interesting, and I would have hoped to move forward with this discussion with all of you. But please, Olli, some concluding remarks before we have to say goodbye to everyone, and let our audience continue with their day. Thank you, everyone, from my side.
Thank you, Anni, and very huge thank you for all the panelists for this good discussion. And I think it's extremely important we are at this moment to discussing and talking these opportunities and challenges. As Stine said, that the infrastructure companies can deliver the infrastructure, but it sure needs to be right place in the right time in the right volume in order to be efficient for the customers in the long run, and that requires discussion. And as Filip said, that there's a technology will be there. So let's make the environment and policies to support that, and therefore but the technologies for the new, like the electrolyzers and in hydrogen and many other new clean gases and other substances, they will be there when we have the market and customer need there. Whereas as Outi from Neste also looked into that, its possibility see it is a transition as an opportunity, looking totally different the whole game, and I think that's something we as a companies should do and the society should do, because a lot of opportunities inside countries and globally emerging in this transition, what is more apparent, and that's what Helena's team is doing in the Business Finland, looking the roadmaps. So I think there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle are discussing at the moment, and that's a good thing, and we should definitely continue that.
Thank you, and thank you for our great panelists. Thank you, Olli. Thank you for the audience. The recording of this event will be able from the same address a little later, and the feedback survey will be sent. And also already part 3 of our webinar series has been started, so we can expect more fabulous and great guests and discussion on this topic later on. What comes to hydrogen, based on discussion today, it really seems that it is bigger than just a hype this time. Alas, at least in Finland, we are only in the beginning of our journey. Thank you, everyone. Gasgrid Studio thanks you, and until next time. Bye.
Thank you.